new. Husbandry is anything with healthcare. So I talked a little bit about that just a moment ago. And Kyuquot is demonstrating one of those husbandry behaviors right now. Now this might look pretty familiar to you guys, right? This pose here is something that you might see in the presentations, but people don't realize that the purpose of us training that behavior has nothing to do with the presentation. It's great to show you guys how impressive they are. It's great for photographs. So we like to use it, but the reason they know that behavior is what just happened is we were actually able to get a weight on Kyuquot. Yeah, I did give them a hint earlier, but it wasn't exact. Any guesses? 91.72. Anyone else? Were we able to see it?
Go higher. 96? Higher.
Oh.
What's your guess? Lower.
All right, so between 96 and 97. 96.30. So every single week, sometimes twice a week, we ask the whales to come slide out on this silver platform here, and they lift their head and tail, because believe it or not, when they leave, mostly it's the tail, and it seems to help them to lift their head as well, but when they leave their tail in the water, the weight will be off by hundreds and hundreds of pounds. So we ask them to lift everything up to try to make sure that we can get as accurate of a weight as possible. And then we just pay attention to that number. So they pretty much grow throughout their lifetime, especially the males, because their pectoral flippers on the side and their dorsal fin on top, that does continue to grow, kind of like our ears and nose. It's not like that on the females, but Sakari, who's 13 years old, she's still growing. So we want to make sure that as they grow, it's at a healthy rate, right? It's not happening too fast. But at the same time, when they're fully grown, we want to make sure that they're relatively maintaining a weight. So just like us, just like people, they all have their own individual metabolisms. They're going to change and fluctuate throughout their lifetime. So Kamea, who is 9 years old, her metabolism looks very different from Kyuquot, who is a 31-year-old male. So it's important for us to make sure that we're weighing them very regularly and keeping track of that. And then we actually will share that information, and management and our veterinary staff work together to determine the exact diet for each individual. And I'm not talking just how many pounds of fish. I'm talking down to the kilocalories of what they need. And so they all have their own individual diet that is given to them every single day. And it's a variety of 6 different kinds of fish that will change based on what they determine their needs are for their macronutrients, right? So we're looking at proteins and fats, sometimes even water content. So some people haven't really thought about it, but they don't drink the water that they live in. It's salt water, so just like us, they can't drink that. All of the water that they get comes from the fish that they eat. They're actually physiologically designed to absorb water from the fat that they eat, and that allows them to stay hydrated. So that's important for us to pay attention to as well. So their diets are prepared every single morning, and then we make sure that they get all of that food every single day. Now you can imagine it's quite a bit of food, especially for an animal that weighs 9,630 pounds. The pounds change, but I believe Kyuquot currently is getting about 120 pounds. Again, we go more by the kilocalories, but I think total is about 120 pounds. And so you'll see us feed it throughout the day. You'll see it in the presentations and all of our sessions. But again, we want to make sure that we're not just providing food, because that would be so boring if all we ever gave them was food. What happens when they're not hungry, right? I've worked with young animals some parents might be able to relate to this, young animals that don't want to eat, and so you have to actually train them to eat their food. So that's not always the most reinforcing or the most valuable thing that you can provide, but we do want to make sure that they're all getting their perfectly curated diet for each individual. But that's why it's so important for us to have those relationship sessions. Cassidy here is loving on Kyuquot, giving him a nice rub down. That's a really important part of their day as well, right? Because without that relationship, we wouldn't be able to get a weight on him. We wouldn't be able to do all the other really neat things that allow us to take care of them. Some other examples of some of the husbandry behaviors that they know include rolling over so that we can draw blood from their tail flukes, different lineups, so different positions in the water that they'll turn and roll for us so that we can get a good visual exam and see different parts of their body. They'll also exhale pretty heavily for us, and we use that. We'll put a petri dish over their blowhole, ask them to exhale, and then we're able to grow cultures to make sure that their lungs are healthy. Speaking of lungs, we do ultrasounds of their lungs. So that's a very sensitive spot of a marine mammal, is making sure that they maintain their lung health. And also, every day, twice a day, we brush their teeth. So killer whales' teeth are very different from ours. They don't have any enamel, and they only have one set throughout their entire life. So the teeth that they're born with are the teeth they have forever. And they're not soft to the touch, but soft because they don't have that enamel, so they can get worn down pretty easily. And it's susceptible to, bacteria entering the body. So while killer whales aren't brushing their teeth out in the wild, here we have found that we want to make sure that that's an area that we keep a really close eye on. So